So good afternoon and a very warm welcome to what I hope will be an engaging and energizing discussion. It's wonderful to continue proceedings with another dose of vitamin T, where my distinguished panel and I will delve into emerging tastes and trends, and more importantly, try and shine a light on how these can help unlock more demand and more critically, more value. That's the end game that we want to get to. As a lifelong tea enthusiast, I'm super excited and privileged to be in a room filled with tearistas, teaholics, and chivanists. I think I was expecting 300 to 400 people in the room, which is a little unfortunate, but if I assume that there were 400 of us in the room, and each person had about 15 years of experience in the tea industry, which is actually conservative, that snowballs into a 6,000-year category knowledge and exposure. That, by the way, is older than how tea is. Yeah, so that's pretty awesome to think of the kind of experience that we have in terms of the delegates this time at this convention. That's pretty special. And because we all know so very well that tea is our Velcro of loyalty, and its magic really sucks you in for life. Nobody really leaves tea. And this reminds me of one of my favorite songs called Hotel California by the legendary American rock band, the Eagles. And its iconic line, you can check out anytime you like, but you can never leave. So I think the tea industry is something like that. Pretty special. But circling back to our industry, let's be honest, there's normally a pessimistic ring to it. Challenges on climate change, on increasing input costs, non-availability of labor, poor yields, pesticides, MRL, stricter regulatory, tariff, non-tariff barriers, sanitation, living wages. I could go on. And don't get me wrong, every single one of these is an imperative that needs attention. Sorry. But for the purpose of this session, it's not going to be all doom and gloom. I'm going to approach it from a position of upbeat positivity, because this session is about trends and how they can help the industry going forward. And I'm going to follow my blood group, which is be positive. Yeah, hopefully a lot of you in this crowd also have a blood group which is be positive. Yeah, I can see some hands up. So I'm going to approach this panel discussion with some hope and positivity. So let's be a little bit upbeat. We've heard a lot of doom and gloom. And as I said, this session is about trends, how we can improve things going forward. So we'll take a slightly different perspective of positivity on this journey. And the emerging trends around tea are positive. As I said, they're gathering momentum. They are, we are aspiring to inspire. And realistically, our industry deserves to thrive and not just survive, as we seem to be doing at the moment. And here are just two facts to get you started. Two feel-good facts which I thought I'd share. Everybody has heard about this. If you pick up any article, you read about anything about tea, it probably starts with tea is the world's second most drunk beverage after water. But what exactly does this mean? Have you ever actually thought about the numbers? What's the math behind this? And what it means in terms of the math is what's on that screen. There's 8 billion people on the planet, and there's 8 billion cups of tea that are drunk. And here's the clincher. Every day. I mean, would you have ever guessed that? I mean, that's pretty awesome. That's a demand blessing which people, any industry would have loved to have. And that's pretty amazing. And that's today's baseline. Yeah, so it's a pretty feel-good fact. Simple to remember, 8 billion people on the planet, 8 billion cups of tea every single day. And here's the other one which has always interested me. We mentioned this, it was touched upon earlier today. Tea is both a picker-upper and a calmer-downer. And it's got this magical dynamic duo. It's got this mix of caffeine, which takes you up, and theanine, which gives you a relaxed alertness. No other food or beverage that I can think of actually meets these very diametrically opposite need states. One takes you up, the other takes you down. And I think that's the beauty about tea. It soothes you, but it also can stimulate you. It refreshes you, but it can also relax you. It's a sustained alertness and a wakeful relaxation. And that's something which is entirely unique, something we should try and see how we can communicate cleverly with consumers, because it's something that is entirely unique to our beverage. And yet, despite this huge demand that I talked about, 8 billion cups of tea a day, these are the three existing
The US market.
challenges that the industry faces. This is the way I've framed it. There are three fundamental mismatches. And there are the mismatches have been touched upon earlier, but I'll just kind of explain them as I go along. Number one is very simple. We mentioned global supply has always exceeded global demand. Now this is something we've said over and over again, but here's some mind-numbing numbers. So China grew its production from 2 billion kilograms to 4 billion kilograms in 10 years. 2 billion kilograms that it grew in 10 years, just to give you a perspective, that's 1,000 million kilograms. That's the equivalent of the crop of India today and Kenya today. So just think about it. In 10 years, China has additionally produced the crop of India and the crop of Kenya put together. That's mind-boggling. That's a 100% increase in its crop in a decade. Kenya, I think it was already mentioned today by my colleague George. He mentioned how it went from 400 million kilograms to 600 million kilograms within a decade. Again, 50% increase. Now, these are mind-blowing numbers, 50% increase in production, 100% increase in production. And if you compare it with consumption, which trails along at 2-3% a year, the mismatch is obvious. Yeah? That's the first mismatch. And what that mismatch does, with supply always staying ahead of demand, you don't need to be a rocket scientist to say that, that lends a bearish tone on the market. Prices are depressed and the industry is always wallowing in unsatisfactorily low prices. The second mismatch is, again, I think it was alluded to earlier, it was about tea's share of throat and the share of wallet. So tea is consumed a lot. Let's go back to that 8 billion cups of tea a day. And yet, it's got a huge volume, but the value is very, very low. What that effectively means in simple terms is that it's a cheap beverage. That's what it means. But it also means that there's an opportunity, because it means there's room to grow. It means there's room to uptrade, there's room to add value, there's room to premiumize and bridge that gap. Hypothetically, if the value share was equal to the volume share, our category would be 4 times as larger, as you can see, because it's a huge disproportion between the two. And I always say that in the tea industry, the value of tea's value is undervalued. And I think that's what some of these trends will try and do, to try and boost demand, boost value, and grow the category pie so that there's something in it for every stakeholder in the consumer journey. And then the last mismatch is something which is, again, I think it was touched upon very, very briefly. Not only is the share of throat and share of value at a mismatch, but even the value that is there in the industry is not equitably distributed. Typically, there's more value at the selling end, at the supermarket end, at the brand end, that's downstream, and less value at the farming end, the cultivation end, the origin end, and the upstream area. And that needs systemic reform in terms of a better model of shared responsibility and shared solutions. But the key question that we need to ask is, while these three fundamental mismatches are there, that's the key question at the bottom. What can trends do? Can emerging trends boost demand? That's the first point. Can they boost value? That's the second point. And can they actually help create a more equitable industry for all stakeholders? That's the third point. So let me just quickly wind up with a chart which is a personal reflection of a few trends in play around the world. I've classified them into 5 trends on the left, 5 trends on the right. The ones on the left, I've said these are in play. These have been around. This is what is, there is strong green shoots. That's being exploited today. That's going well. Those are in play. And then on the right-hand side, you've got some trends which are relatively new, which are exploding as we speak, and may those continue to grow the category value. So the ones on the left are pretty straightforward. I don't need to repeat that. The profusion of flavors, taste, we know this. That they say there are more teas in China than there are wines in the world. Yeah, so that's the sort of phenomenal variety that tea has, the dazzling diversity and the endless flair that tea has. So taste, and then the second one is health and wellness. Those have been the traditional category drivers of tea in the industry. There's then convenience, grab and go, ready to drink, iced tea, we mentioned that. There's digital first brands which are proliferating at a phenomenal rate, specialty teas, gifting occasions. And then there's the conscious consumer, which is all about the sustainability angle, which has also been in play. This is about traceability, transparency, certification, blockchain, and that's all of the good sustainability work that happens at the back end of our industry. But I want to focus more on the right-hand side because that's a little bit newer. And let's start with matcha, which of course has been alluded to as well. And I think matcha is, I think if you haven't seen matcha in India and anywhere else in the world, then you must be living under a rock. Because matcha has exploded. It's no longer a fad, it's no longer a trend. It's now a category in its own right. And it's just growing and growing and growing. It appeals to millennials. It's that route to youth, which I've put on the right-hand side. That's what we are looking to kind of target. And it's really something which is, a fave on TikTok. It steals the march in any search stakes. It's something that millennials naturally gravitate to. It's Instagrammable. It's got a story about where it comes from, how it's grown under shade, how it's stone milled. So there's a wonderful story about provenance, processing, and everything magical about tea, which is why I think matcha has caught on so much. I won't delve very more on matcha. It's actually given a fillip to even the coffee industry. You walk into any restaurant today, and while they've got all their coffees there, they'll have a big section today on matcha. And it's actually driving more value for the outlet than some of their coffees might do. Yeah, so that's a big one. The other one I want to just touch on briefly is new style teas. I don't know if people are familiar with new style teas. This is a very, very China innovation. This has been going on for the last 5-10 years in China. And what I mean by new style teas are traditional teas to which they add, it could be milk, it could be fruits, it could be syrups, it could be fruit purees, it could be cheese foam. And that's what is magical about this model. There's hundreds of permutations. Millennials can choose this with this, this with this, and it opens up a complete product matrix of phenomenal choice and novelty. And this is a trend which is happening in China at a pace which I don't think we can imagine. So there's a company, I'll give you, it's called Mishui. Guess how many outlets they have? They sell ice cream, they sell tea, but tea was their first go-to product. They've got 55,000 outlets in China selling new style beverages. There's another company called Good Me, and I'm giving the English version, not the Mandarin version. There's another company called Good Me. There's another one called Aunt Jenny. There's another one called Cha Panda. There's another one called Chagi. There's another one called Haiti. There's one called Gongcha. There's one called Nayuki. I could go on. And this is an innovation that China has done. And you saw the amount of tea that they've additionally produced. What do you think they've done with that? This is the sector where all that tea is going. This is where they've innovated. And it's not just about a drink in a shop. This is an integrated innovation where they are starting with the consumer, figuring out what works best in the store through extraction machines that optimize, taste and texture. And then they work it back to the tea gardens. They say, okay, what's the kind of high aromatics that this machine will require? They look at oolong teas, they look at jasmine teas, they tweak the bushes, they tweak clones to make sure they're producing more aromatic teas, which can then fit into these new style beverages. So it's a full integrated system that China has developed. The last 400 or 500 million kilograms that China has grown in the last decade has all gone into this segment. Entirely new. This did not exist 15, 20 years back, but this is where it's absolutely exploding. So that's new style teas. I won't touch very much on the rest for paucity of time, but the other one I'll just mention briefly is tea in energy drinks. So because tea is seen to be have a clean passport, it's healthy, a lot of big companies are taking notice. So the likes of Coke and Pepsi. Coke has a stake in a brand called Monster Beverages. I don't know if many of you have had this energy drink. Monster has a line of iced teas which it is now pushing a lot more. A lot of these products that are being driven by Monster and even by Pepsi, they have a brand called Rockstar, they have a brand called Celsius. A lot of the energy is coming from caffeine, and they want clean caffeine. And what they are using for clean caffeine is actually green tea extracts. So the energy industry is also getting into this, and just as matcha is growing the category pie for tea, the energy category is actually growing the category pie for soft drinks and CSDs. Yeah? And I'll just end with this last slide. There's a case study. This is one of the chains I mentioned in China. You look at the sort of imagery that is there. This is called Shagi. They've got 6,000 stores in China. They've expanded into Thailand, Vietnam, Philippines, Malaysia, Hong Kong, South Korea. And look at the sort of the class act that they have in terms of building heritage, but also with a lot of modernity. They make a cup of a new style beverage in 8 seconds. It could cost $2 or $3. The more premium ones could cost $5 for a glass like that. They have a premium product which is based on jasmine tea. And every single outlet has got like a hero product. Some are based on oolong tea, some on jasmine teas. And this is a trend, I think, which is something we need to learn from. What are the kinds of Indian teas that we could export and tap into this market? They want aromatic teas which fit very well into these extraction machines. Could Nilgiri teas, could Darjeeling teas of a certain price point, of a certain quality point, find their home into this kind of application that they have there? What could be our sort of similar new style beverage in India with the sort of integrated innovation system that we are seeing there? Yeah, so those are just a few thoughts that I thought I'll leave with you. And I will sort of end with that and hand over to my superb panel, who will cover this. Cover the topic of tastes and trends.